Welcome to the table, where voices meet, ideas ignite, and the future of infrastructure takes place. I'm Kelsey Click, Enterprise Success Manager and Women at Bentley Co-Chair, and we are live from the Bentley Systems Civil User Conference 2025, surrounded by brilliant minds, groundbreaking technology, and a shared mission to build smarter, more resilient infrastructure for all. At the table, we dive beyond the PowerPoints and product updates. This is where real conversations happen. We're sitting down with engineers, innovators, educators, and rising leaders to unpack what's shaping our industry, from talent pipelines to AI, digital twins to digital transformation. Whether you're tuning in from the field, the office, or right here at the conference, welcome, grab a seat. You belong at the table. I want to welcome our first ever guest to the table, Dustin Parkman. Dustin, welcome.
Hey, thank you, Kelsey.
Dustin,
glad to be here.
Wonderful to have you here in the beautiful city of Denver, Colorado. We've been really blessed with some great weather this week so far. We got summer still kicking in, so getting out that sunshine still for our wonderful 3 days of infrastructure and engineering discussions here. How have you been doing so far?
So far, it's been great, right? We got kicked off this morning, and we've got an incredible lineup of content for engineers and designers for civil infrastructure. It's really a well put together conference.
It really is. We have about 500 plus users from across the globe we saw this morning. And it's really exciting to hear all the excitement around the future of AI, where digital transformation is going to take us. And today, Dustin, we're really wanting to hear a little bit more about you, learn who is Dustin Parkman of Bentley Systems, and then a little bit about what gets you excited about where the industry is going after this morning's keynote. Dustin, tell us a little bit more about yourself, where you came from, and how you got here to Bentley Systems and what that journey's looked like for you.
Okay, yeah, it's a bit of a long story, so I'll try to keep it short, but my background was in computer science and economics, and I was working for a company doing plant design software, and so that company got bought by Bentley Systems, and that's how I ended up in the company, and that was, sadly to say, over 20 years ago. Since then, I've had a lot of different roles within Bentley, a lot of different leadership positions. Currently, my background has been more in product. So I've worked in a lot of the different product organizations throughout Bentley in different roles, product management, leadership, et cetera, et cetera. But my current role is lead up our industry group. And so what we do is we sit at the center of the organization in the sense of trying to work with product, sales, marketing, ecosystems, and ventures, and really try to figure out how we vertically bring value to market for our customers. So looking at key industries like transportation and water and energy and mining, et cetera, and understanding the key products that add value there and how they work together and how we make use of the data. Really, our key focus these days is really about how we take all these different disparate applications across all these different engineering disciplines, and how do we leverage the information and essentially put Humpty Dumpty together into what we call a digital twin. So basically that is the ability of taking all this information and having the information coexist, be able to leverage one another, and basically leverage that data beyond its initial purpose, which is for engineering and design.
It's almost like taking apart the different layers, and now how do you put them together safely, securely, but also effectively so that you can efficiently design and build these projects that we drive on every single day.
Yeah, absolutely said.
Yeah. So Dustin, one of the things that I think is interesting around the product team today is that it seems like your organization specifically is almost the watering hole for Bentley Systems, where all the teams come together to unsilo themselves. How do you work through deciding where your focus for the industry team is going to be and where you're going to put those efforts to where we see in the keynote today, where you're actually focusing those thoughts to?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we live in multiple worlds, but really we look for markets that are actually growing and healthy markets, but are also going through digital transformation. Some markets are more mature than others. And so we really look for the ones that are beginning their journey or are well down the line in their journey of digital transformation. And really, it starts with the owner-operators of the infrastructure.
Absolutely.
And so they more or less set the moral compass or tone for the industry. So if they're reluctant to change, then it creates a waterfall effect in the industry that they're reluctant as well. So we gravitate to the ones that are really setting the tone for all the other industries And that gives us an opportunity to really work with them to understand, okay, what data matters. There's data that's creating their design, what's relevant for that information with their contractors, is what's going to help them construct this infrastructure better, more efficient, more cost effectively. How do you mitigate all the usual KPIs that you would find in a construction scenario? And then the same is true when you actually go into operations. So there are a lot of industries. Transportation is a key one, particularly that we're talking about at this conference. And so for a number of years, they've been going through this transformation of their own thing they label called digital delivery. And so there are many different industries that have something similar to that, and they'll go by different names. But within the transportation realm, digital delivery is really about leveraging the equity and the artifacts that are created during the engineering and design process and making use of those in construction and making use of those in operations and maintenance to basically make those functions work better. Now, that's an oversimplification of what we're trying to do, because the reality of the industry is that there are a lot of contractual barriers to making that possible. It'd be nice if everything was a nice kumbaya and all data was available.
We had a consortium that said this is what we do and how we do it. I agree. I think that is one of the challenges I hear users talk about most, isn't that they don't love embracing our technology and where it's going. It's that their standards and what their requirements are not ready to embrace the technology. And so often you will hear users saying, I'll go and do this extra work because in Cesium or in OpenSite Plus or in Open Roads, where they're doing some additional training to learn because they're students of the industry, but then they'll often have to downgrade the versioning just to meet their requirements. And it seems like a heartbreaking thing on the opposite end as the advocate for them, saying, keep going. I know you're doing the extra work, but it does pay off 5 years from now when you're going to be an expert in the industry, is always what I share with them.
Yeah. And I would have described like the previous 5 years, even going back almost a decade, as that's what it was, where you had individuals that were pushing the limits, not because they were contractually obligated to, but because it set them apart. It differentiated their company. It differentiated individuals as engineers. And over time, like anything that's new, that starts to get a bit of momentum and get a bit more motion. And so now we're seeing the opposite. We're seeing the industry owner-operators pushing their supply chains, whereas it was the reverse, where you saw the engineering firms and contractors pushing on the owner-operators. Please.
And come with us on this journey.
Yeah.
Especially, I think you saw that a lot when the drone technology started to become more mainstream in the survey practice, and how that uplift of cost is so daunting to an owner-operator. But then when you can go in and show some of that pro bono work that you can do with this technology, it almost changed the game for a lot of our drone operators in the industry.
And now that's common practice, right? There's essentially no survey that's done without a drone today, which is that was just a decade ago.
Isn't that fascinating? Yeah. And I always say this when I first started here at Bentley Systems. I started 3 years ago. I have a very uniquely different background than you, Dustin. I come from the public education space. I was a teacher for 10 years, but really wanted to push myself. And I was a big believer and advocate to my students, is you push your boundaries when you feel like you need to go and see what you're made of, bet on yourself. And I did that around COVID and landed in technology. And 6 years later, I was blessed at an opportunity at Bentley Systems to come and be a strategist. And you realize that the more you push yourself, it creates those new opportunities. And so pushing those owner operators creates even more opportunity for them to expand their portfolios like they always crave to do. But then you hear about backlogs and you're trying to understand, how do you manage that seesaw going on constantly? So tell me a little bit more, since I know you do speak with the owner operators. What is it that they're trying to push the technology towards today? What is it on their end that they really care about?
I think ultimately it comes down to integration of information and sharing of information across their organization. So if you look at an owner operator, within their walls, they don't really have the same contractual boundaries, but they obviously have departmental boundaries. And so what they're ultimately trying to do is build a better quality product, build it as cost effectively as they can, control their risks. And they see data as being a key element of weighing to do that. So whether it's being able to predict behavior before it actually happens through simulation, whether it's able to understand your cost curves, your material supplies, all of those things are essentially what they're trying to do. So they're ultimately not trying to do anything different than they've always done, but they see data and digital transformation as a force multiplier to allow them to do it more effectively.
Yeah, it's almost like this new piece of information they have, and they're learning what's possible with all this data. But one of the things that I hear commonly, and I'd be curious to see how Bentley is going to be addressing this, but is in ORD, the heaviness of the data, because they're getting so much of it now.
Yeah.
They don't know what to do with all of that. And I know one of the beautiful things about Cesium is, yes, we have the visualization aspects, but it's actually the ability to process the data on the back end that I get very excited about, and their data processing capabilities. Is that what Bentley sees the Cesium merit outside of the visualization, very clear reasons why it layers in so beautifully? Was that the kind of piece that sets Cesium apart as part of that acquisition?
So Cesium allows you to consume that information a lot more effectively. Yes. So we see the combination of Cesium with our iTwin platform being really the differentiator. So the iTwin platform is our core technology that we've been working on probably for almost a decade now. And it really specializes in engineering density information, everything from vector graphics to engineering constraints to simulation conditions. Those things are very unique and specialized. And what Cesium provided was a way to actually interact with that a lot more effectively. So it's a really good combination. And we had visualization before, but the Cesium piece really has brought it to a whole nother level, as well as bringing in a way to process a lot of the geospatial information much more effectively at scale.
Yeah, I didn't even realize that with Cesium, when I was at the conference that they held in Philadelphia this past June, they did a really very special round of keynote speakers, but it was all of their user community. And they got to do 5-minute little TED Talk keynotes. I'm sure you've seen them done before. And they're really fun and exciting. And I think what's interesting is because you get to see the talent of the future start to share their ideas. And there was one fascinating wind simulation example from a student in Colombia. And she was showing how she used Cesium, how she learned through Cesium, how easy it was to adopt and learn. She's now become one of their certified developers because of this project she worked on, where she used architecture to create a building and did wind simulation on how to cool the building through an optimal way. And it was just fascinating to see. And that's where you put the pieces together. Because for me, on the business side of Bentley, I don't see the magic happen. So when you get to finally see it, it really, for me, I think, got rid of all the gray space that I was missing as a new employee for a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that I really think Cesium is going to unlock is the ability for the non-engineering community to understand and interact with engineering data. So one of the things that we've been working on for a number of years is trying to get engineering information used more frequently throughout design, throughout construction, throughout operations and maintenance and so on. And the challenge has been the information itself is very engineering-ish. And so if you're not an engineer, it can go over your head, or it can be, it's not familiar, right? A very practical example is if you would, even today it happens, right? So if you go to your local community and they're going to do, maybe let's say they're going to expand a road, they're going to build they're going to do something, right? And you're going to look at basically engineering blueprints, which are for the layman who comes to a community meeting, they really don't know what to do with it, but they're obligated to do that to be compliant, but no one's really going to comment on it very well. But if you actually show them, this is what it's going to mean to your community, and you can visually interact with it and say, oh, okay, that's great. It's going to open up this access corridor, or it's going to create better traffic. Or it might be, hey, that's a terrible idea. I have a storefront right there. Your bridge is going to put me out of business. You can actually really understand the form factors, the functions, the behavior, even that the impact it's going to have, whether it's economic, whether it's traffic, environmental, et cetera, et cetera. And that was just almost impossible to do just only a few years ago.
With our nice printed plan sets that are very simple to understand. That is a layer of this project. No, and I agree. Recently, I'm a mom of a young 3-year-old. And so what do moms love to do on weekends? We love to get outside and go to the parks. And one of our parks was recently going through construction. And I went to the public website just to understand what was going on, because it's already a beautiful park. Why are they changing it? they needed to add more parking, which is a wonderful addition. And I'm here for it as a community member. But when I went to go look into what they were doing, I really had some difficulties understanding what what the opportunity here is for them. Why are we investing into this parking lot at this playground? Because then we can ask those questions. You can have the community honestly be more educated and engage better.
Absolutely.
Because they can look at it in a forum that they understand, that they can consume, and then ask their own questions, whether basic or complex at that point, which is
absolutely.
what we find.
And understanding the before and after. So you could actually take a snapshot of your existing, in this case, parking lot, showcase what the problems are. We don't have capacity. People are parking on the roadside. This is the state of the affair. And with this new expansion of the parking lot, it's going to solve these problems. So it allows people to kind of understand the current condition versus what's actually going to take place.
Now, here's an interesting question. It's fully off the top of the head, because we were talking about generative AI in the keynote session, and there was a couple great questions about capabilities in the future. And I know Bentley's pushing the boundaries, and we're finally getting to see a teaser of what AI is capable of in our design products, right, with microstation. And then we would think coming soon as our open products are next up being worked on very actively. And so it's exciting to see. Man, I lost my train of thought. That's okay. Oh, man, what was I saying?
You were about to say, I think you were about to ask about OpenSite.
Yeah, and I was going to get, trying to go to OpenSite and microstation so we could start talking about that more. But no, I think that's really the exciting things you hear about, right? Is what can AI do to alleviate, you said, the mundane tasks, the repeatable tasks. How can we plug and play what we don't always want to be replicating? And
I think the really simple description of what we're trying to do with AI across our products is have engineers and designers do more engineering and design work and less of the busy work.
Placing this pole here, but really getting to be more in the theory of design.
Yeah. So I think ultimately we want them to be doing what they're really good at and less of the stuff that they're just required to do. And then, so that's one thing. And then the other is also helping them have an assistant to be more productive. Everything from being able to do parametric design, parametric modeling, but essentially be able to communicate with your system in a natural language and have it be able to react to that and do a lot of the complex work, upfront work that you might be required, and allow them to say, okay, yes, that's what I'm looking for. And then let them do the final calibration, augmentation of the design to get it engineered quality, engineered grade. So I think those are two key areas. And then the last is just more about data itself. And so all of these organizations are sitting on treasure troves of information that they authored, curated, collected over the last 20, 30, 40, 100 years. And so that seems to be a massive opportunity to be able to gain insights from past projects, lessons learned, particularly as you look at tying it into existing operations and maintenance systems as well. So you can compare a design that happened 20 years ago, 50 years ago, et cetera, to the performance of that asset today. And what would you do? And what would you do differently if you were going to build a system that's similar to that, or you were going to rehabilitate that system, et cetera, et cetera. So I think there's just a lot there that is all upside and potential.
Yeah, I mean, you can learn from your mistakes. I think right now, a lot of it, and I always say this, it seems so archaic sometimes, but people are still doing things on pen and paper in our industry, because I'm like, these are the most brilliant minds that we have building everything around us. And it's such a responsibility. I don't think we ever really highlight enough, just when we talk about it, is how much respect you have to have for these designers to take on the responsibility to put their stamp and say, this building is not going to fall. Every day I wake up and say, I'm grateful I'm not one of them.
Yeah.
And that's something with the AI, I know I hear a lot from users. There's a little bit more of that concern, is that, and I know we're pivoting, but I think it's a really poignant topic, is when AI does generate these plan sets or this configuration based off of this conversation, the QA on the back end, how does that look long term? I know we don't have a solution for it today.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of things I think that are just unknowns today on how you kind of QA what the AI is doing. I know when I use it for my business practices, of whether it's writing a quick email, I have to do a lot of checking of just a simple email. So when you think of something as serious as building design that's going to be stamped and sent off to be built, I'm sure that's something that Bentley really takes seriously and really wants to make sure that we can capitalize and support well.
Yeah, absolutely. And engineering is a little bit different, right? Because it is well defined by standards and codes and disciplines. Unlike creative works,
Yep.
it's subjective to whoever's looking at it. Does it say what I want it to say? Does it visually communicate what I want it to communicate? Whereas engineering is precise, right? There are rules for how you do it, and you can bend those rules to some extent, but there are rules. And so where I would predict the industry is going is you're going to start to see, instead of just large language models, which is a current state of play and leveraging foundational models to do some of this automation engineering work, you're going to start to see small language models that are very unique to engineering disciplines. And so those would be models that would basically really understand the craft of structural engineering or linear roadway design. And so by having these types of very verticalized models with some type of agent or with an agent wrapped around it, then these agents can start to communicate together to cooperate, which I think that's
It's like you're creating your dream team.
Yeah,
of assistants.
You got a dream team of assistants. That's the way you want to see it. I could imagine if you're an architect, right? So architects, they're very good at creating the form and the function of a building, but then they have to go ask a structural engineer, say, okay, is this structurally sound?
Is this possible?
Is this possible?
I'm sure Gaudi did not like structural engineers in his time. I don't know if you've ever gotten to see any of
I have
his.
seen it.
It's some of the most striking work. Familia, when I walked in it the first time, it absolutely blows you away. Just the size and the scale, and that it's still, as of this year, I think it's still under construction until 2026 was that date. So you see things like that, and you ask yourself, how is this possible?
Yeah. So you could easily imagine a world where the the architect says, hey, I'm going to ask an agent, is this even possible? And because it's a preliminary decision, that agent could then probably validate it up front, not the whole structural engineering, but basically say, this is possible or not possible.
It's like your best friend saying, yes, you're nuts or you're not.
Right.
Yeah, let's keep trying to iterate on this. You're onto something, or no, go put that in the closet. You should not wear that out tonight. It's not going to work.
You might even be able to say, well, okay, great. Could you create me a structural envelope for the building that acts as a preliminary design that we're going to feed to the structural engineers just to give them more depth and context of what you're thinking.
And that's only one layer of it, right? And there's how many in the life cycle of projects? Hundreds by the end of it?
Absolutely.
Unlimited amount. And so it's, if you see, and I always ask this to my users, is how do you see AI helping your life from wasted man hours or just workload? And they're just like, Kelsey, if I could get time back to go do the things I love about engineering, what I would produce is so much different. And it always shocks me. It always shocks me. It's like there's so much more talent that hasn't been untapped. It's like untapped because of the constraint. And so it's fun to see how they collaborate together and making those handoffs goes more seamlessly through the technology. I think it's going to be really interesting. One of the things I'm curious to, because you're talking about the public perception of the project and things like that, is the idea or the hope one day that me as Kelsey, an enterprise success manager, could say, I'm really struggling and I want to go and I'm going to learn more about our software. So I want to go try the AI, and I go into MicroStation and I'm going to be creating a site plan for a park.
Yep.
And so can I give it the community challenges that we're trying to solve for, not just the actual, I would say, more hard information we tend to pump into AI?
Yep. Yeah, I think that is certainly in the realm of possibility, right? I think the idea is to basically provide context. The more context you'll be able to provide a design system, the more accurate it's going to be. But ideally, you would be able to provide vague context and get some type of result.
Yeah.
But just like you would in today with a large language model, if you give it a very vague context,
going to give you a very vague response.
It's going to give you a very vague response. So I would expect some of that. Now,
I call that the teenage boy response. It's like
But we will have some level of guardrails because we're going to try to stay in our lane, which is where our competence is. So it's not the same as asking a vague question to a large language model. Yeah, I think that's certainly in the realm of possibilities. And the other thing is like, hey, I think I'm going to do this here, or I want to go explore. Here's a practical example, just this one I've been working on for a little bit. If you paid attention, all you hear about is data center development, and everybody's writing a report about it.
Yeah.
And it's going to It's either going to change the world,
Or ruin it, or end the world. Yep.
depending on which media outlets you pay attention to. And but one of the key things around building a data center is the actual where you're going to build it, right? Because you have to have access to land. Nobody wants one in their backyard.
No, they don't.
You have to have access to water. You have to have access to power. And that's a really hard problem to solve. With AI, it might be as similar to the scenario I showed in my keynote, which is, all right, I need to understand where's the best location to actually meet the needs of what I'm trying to do. And so you could easily see that saying, okay, here's 20 different locations, and I'm going to conceptually design it out to see how it might fit.
And the coolest part I thought that you showed, and I had never seen it before with OpenSite Plus, but I'd heard it was capable, was when it gave you the different OpenSite plan options, that it gave you the price breakdown. And I thought that's a game changer even, that you have that knowledge, that power of that knowledge that early into the design process. How did we even conceptually bring that to the table? Was that always a goal for us as an organization? Because it truly blew me away when I saw it today.
Yeah, that was always a plan, because when you're early on in conceptual design or even preliminary design, that's one of the things you have to know. You want to understand, okay, form factor probably is the first priority. It's got to meet its function and what you're trying to build it for in the first place. And then the second is, okay, what are the costs and the impacts? And so if you can narrow down 3, 4, 5, a dozen site locations that meet the form factors and requirements of what you're trying to achieve, then it comes down to, okay, where can I build it that's most cost effective? Usually.
That's what we try to do. But
you at least need to understand the cost impacts. And from a civil perspective, the biggest costs are earthworks. So moving dirt, that's the biggest cost. And then it's drainage and then materials and so forth afterwards. So yeah, I think that was always our goal, to be able to do that. And I think as we look at other engineering disciplines early on in planning, conceptual design, and preliminary design, we'll take the same into account, right? So you could imagine you're going to build a roadway, and let's just say we're here in Denver. I'm a skier. And so I make that track up I-70 from Denver to Vail quite often. And if it's snowing, it's a nightmare.
I've heard that once or twice before.
You could imagine a scenario where you're trying to find optimal routes and cost-effective routes to our alternative routes when it's snowed in. How are you going to get there?
Yeah, and now you're touching other parts, other industries, inorganic or organically, like public safety and risk mitigation. And I think that's one of the things that users realize Bentley Systems supports a lot of, but that's actually a lot of what our software can empower you to do, is part of that risk mitigation aspects of it. And so it's exciting to see that it seems like everything's converging together finally for Bentley to really embrace the name of open products and work together in a seamless fashion finally.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. And I also think you have the industry demanding it as well. So there's a level of accountability there that's pushing instead of us pulling. As an innovator, we're always going to try to stay ahead of the curve and do new things. But I think certainly for some of the things that we've been working on with digital twins, with leveraging data, synthesizing information across all these different disciplines, that it's great to see that the industry is, okay, we're on board, we want it, and we're doing projects with it. I touched on it a little bit in my keynote this morning, which is we have an accredited Premier Scholar program. And these are really your double black belts of civil engineering that are using our tool. And you got to see a glimpse of it this morning in one of the demos that I was showing, which was they recreated this model of I-25 here in Denver, as well as with the East Union Avenue and the Bellevue Railway. And they remodeled everything to a level 400 detail.
When did they have the time to do this?
They did it all in their spare time in preparation for the conference, because they wanted to teach all the other people, like, hey, you can do this. You can have all these engineering disciplines collaboratively working together. You can do digital delivery, deliver this to construction. Really, hats off to them and the effort that they put into making the workshop possible, because it was a lot of work. It was pretty jaw-dropping, the level of detail that they put into it.
It really was. It was really exciting last night. The Premier Scholars were here a little bit early, and they were working on a workshop together. So I've got to meet a lot of them. I do have a couple of Premier Scholars, so I'm really lucky. I'm one of the ESMs that has I have a few, actually. And it's so interesting that I think we learn a lot from them. Well, if you want my opinion, I think we take a lot from our Premier Scholars. I think, and not in a bad way. I think it's just that when you get to see someone that doesn't sit in our walls every day and have the same conversations, come with a new perspective, a fresh lens with their own experience also, it makes you realize the art of the possible through engineering at that point, especially with what you saw on there today. It was striking from a visualization standpoint. I could not believe that's what they did in a collaborative environment. That's, I think, the coolest part of that.
Yeah, that's cool.
They're not all locally based, y'all. They live all over the globe. They have to retrain, recertify every year to be a premier scholar. So it is not easy to have that designation. And so it was really impressive to see that. So Dustin, I know you are going to be hopping on a plane and jet setting around the globe again to go do more awesome things for Bentley Systems. So just your final thoughts of what you are most looking forward to for Bentley and the industry and what are for our users in 26.
So 2026, I'm really excited about a lot of the new AI features that are going to be coming out. So one of the things that I'm most excited about is really a lot of the work that's coming to bear in 2026 with our generative AI and design features. I mean, we launched OpenSite last year as a pre-release and introduced it to the market. And that's been just really exciting. We've been working with key users around the world with that product, fine-tuning that. And so I'm excited to see those types of capabilities start to manifest across not only our next generation products, but as well as a lot of our existing products like Open Roads, MicroStation, Open Rail. So I think that's going to be super exciting. There's some really cool productivity features that are going to be coming out to do exactly what we were just talking about, which is, automate the mundane and allow designers and engineers to do the work that they really love to do more of. And so that's really what is exciting for me.
It's simple. If you love what you do every day, then you're never working a day in your life. And so why don't we make engineers love what they do every day?
Absolutely.
Dustin, I can't thank you enough for taking time to sit with us today. We really just appreciate your insights. And we're really just excited to see where Bentley takes the future of digital delivery next.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.